Thank you for joining us today. Legisway, implementation, and onboarding will begin shortly. For the best viewing experience, please close any unnecessary programs or browsers, clear your browser cache, and make sure you have a strong internet connection. Before the presentation begins, please be aware, the audio for this webcast is through the internet only. Please use headphones or listen to this presentation through your laptop and/or mobile speakers. This is a one-way communication channel. You can hear us, but we cannot hear you. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A widget. If you look around your screen, there are multiple widgets for your use. The first widget you'll see is Help, which can help you if you are having audio issues or the slides are not advancing. The Slides widget displays the PowerPoint presentation. This and all the windows can be customized and resized to your preference. The media player plays the audio and video, including today's demo. The next widget is Q&A. You can use this button to type in any technical questions. For content-related questions, we'll do our best to answer them in the Q&A during the presentation. To learn more about today's presenters, click the speaker bio. Resources provides handouts including slides and supplemental material on today's topic. I am now pleased to hand the presentation over to Michelle Alwyn. Michelle, feel free to take it away.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's Legisway Implementation and Onboarding webinar conversation. My name is Michelle Alwyn, and I am the Legisway product owner and the head of our product implementation and professional services team. For today's webinar, I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Dan Marcus and Greg German. I'd like them to introduce themselves.
Thanks, everyone. Good to be here today. And as Michelle mentioned, I'm Dan Marcus. I lead up our Legisway US sales team, and my goal is to help support our customers all the way from our first discussion through the journey of onboarding and implementing your solution with us.
And my name is Greg German. I am the senior product consultant here with Legisway. I assist a lot of our clients with training, support, implementation, and then also best practices as they take their journey through implementation and their subscription.
Thank you both. So for our topic today of implementation and onboarding for Legisway, we really wanted to break it into three topics or three categories. The first is really what we are hearing. We want to talk about the things that we've heard from customers, what Dan's hearing from people in the market looking for legal tech. Then we want to go into the differentiated approach of Legisway. We want to explain to you what's different about how we do implementation. And then the third topic is really more about the journey itself with Legisway. So these are the three topics that will guide us through today. As was mentioned, feel free to put questions in the Q&A. We will try to read them during the sessions if it matches in. If not, at the end, we'll come back and answer them there as well. So feel free to enter questions whenever you would like. So for our first topic, really what we are hearing before we get into Dan and Greg's personal experience with this, we wanted to share this word cloud. These are some of the topics, the concerns, the things that we hear a lot. So concerns about change management, the burden that implementation of legal technology might be, really just the unknown even, not knowing what to expect, what effort might be required of them. And of course, things like adoption and training and even KPIs. So with this as kind of the framework, you may see yourselves in some of these common worries, maybe not. But Dan, could you share with us a little bit about things that you've been hearing as you and your team have engaged with people looking for legal tech?
Yes, certainly. And, Michelle, our team here, we support customers across, multiple different industries, different sizes of companies. And I would say there's probably about three main themes that we continue to hear from prospects as they're looking into their journey into legal tech. So the first thing being, legal teams oftentimes want to bring on the new software. They, have identified there's some, gaps in terms of their current workflow, but there is concerns and very valid concerns about the internal resources that can be made available to help make the launch a success. Obviously it does require investment on, one's company, and how do you make sure that you have the right stakeholders, the right business partners internally to make sure that this gets off and running in a way that is very conducive. So that's kind of the first area we hear a lot. The second area being is that prospects have already implemented prior software, but they've seen that just the broader business hasn't adopted it, which again is quite a challenge. You take this time to review different platforms, you roll out the training, you become invested in it, you do see the value that there's going to be ROI there, but then 3-6 months down the road, you look at your login reports and you're seeing that nobody is on the platform. So that's a big challenge that a lot of companies are facing, and especially legal teams want to make sure that if you take the time, users actually do deploy the new tool. And then the last thing that we hear very commonly is that you get this software, it's got a lot of great features, can do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's not necessarily always customized to meet the unique needs of a company. So how a particular platform can really be configured and addressed to one's own business process is always top of mind. And again, when we think about just the notion of internal resource support, prior experience with adoption, and then customization, these are all very true and valid reasons as to why there might be pause in proceeding with the software and really need to be top of mind for our customers through their journey with us.
Great. So now, Greg, as you're working with helping to advise our new customers when we implement and onboard them, do you hear similar things, or what kind of what spin does this take as you get engaged with these customers?
We definitely hear a lot of that. The most important, common themes that we hear from clients, they want to share the information with their, internal customers. They want to provide visibility and access, but it does come with some, they're always kind of pause. They want to take a look at all of their processes. They want to make sure that everything is kicked off properly, right? There's almost a lot of pre-planning that they want to go through. And what we do is we help them through that change management piece. We're always looking to help our clients kind of guide their users to the adoption of the solution. I mean, they took the time, the legal team took the time to deploy this particular solution. They've configured it, they've customized it. Those are the big pieces for us. They want to have they want to provide a really smooth experience and transition from the legal team's use, right, to all of the other users. But then they're also, the other big theme that we're hearing is, outside of just providing visibility and adoption of the solution, they want to explore. They want to know what else is available within our solution. Obviously AI is extremely, it's big in the news right now. They want to see how AI can help them, accomplish their, reporting needs, their storage needs, and all of its capabilities. And we commonly hear these themes, and we want to guide the user and the team, the client, through that process.
I have just a couple of follow-ups, if that's okay. So, Greg, I heard you mention, adoption and talking about that. Would you consider that really a core part of the Legisway onboarding and implementation is helping with that adoption?
Absolutely. I think it's great to launch a solution, as Dan mentioned, but we want to get that adoption. We want these users in the system. We want to make sure that they're pulling data out. It's only going to help them find the answers that they need, but then also it's going to provide very, very clear line of sight into everything that's going on from the legal side of the house, from the business side of the house. That adoption is key, and that's why the consultants and the training team are here to assist the clients through that process.
Well, and Dan, I was thinking back to something you said. Last year, Wolters Kluwer published the Future Ready Lawyer Report. In fact, I think we do it every year. And one of the things that came out in that report last fall was that a lot of corporate legal professionals weren't sure they actually even sort of knew all of the legal tech that was out there and available to them. And I'm wondering if you kind of see that. Do you feel like there's an educational role that you're playing as well when you're talking to them about not just what our software does, but how we help them implement it and get started using it?
No, certainly that's a theme we've been seeing through our conversations with customers. And what's been, I would say, probably quite a trend is that a lot of legal teams are using what I would call general software that the business has. Maybe finance has implemented it, or even the sales team has implemented it. And then legal, because it's been part of the broader company tech stack, started to get on board with that particular platform. But what we often find is that that only takes you so far. It kind of reaches a tipping point where the legal team needs their own specified solution to then help make their information more enterprise accessible. So being able to navigate our customers through that journey, understand why, maybe one tool that worked well at the onset for workflows maybe has kind of reached its time frame, and now a more legal specific workflow tool can really help them accelerate efficiencies.
I think when we look at this word cloud, whether you see yourself in this or not, I think a good thing for us to point out is that we are aware of these concerns. We're aware of what people are saying, and we really take that into account during our implementation journey. So I think you'll see that as we go through, that we're really here to partner with you and help to address these concerns whenever we can. Going to move on to the second topic related to implementation and onboarding, and that's really the Legisway difference. So this graphic that we're showing you, this puzzle with the different pieces, I think that probably different legal tech solutions out there, of course, have different components of it. We really feel like part of the Legisway difference is all of the things that we bring to the table. I'm not going to read this out, but there's several things that I would like to point out before we get deeper into the conversation. One is our commitment to work the way you work. What we mean by that is we understand that you have different priorities. Sometimes we might even say you have a day job, and we take those into consideration as we communicate with you and go through that implementation process. We're also very customer centric. We really want to sort of work with you to deliver your vision. As a company and as a software, we have legal and industry expertise that we bring to the table. So a lot of things here that by themselves are valuable, but you bring them all together, and I think it really starts to make up the Legisway difference.
And Greg, just based off of your experience, the question that I have for you is, what have you seen really makes our approach different, and why Legisway? Because oftentimes our customers have gone through implementations with other software, but again, that might have been something for a finance team or the sales team. So how do we kind of sit down and really address legal processes specifically during that implementation journey?
In terms of kind of success, I would always say partnership with a consultant is the key to our success and our client success. I think most importantly is we have a clear path of communication, right? We know that the client has, timelines that they need to consider, et cetera. Obviously their day job as well. We want to make sure that when we come into any new implementation, we are planning ahead of time. We have, bits of information. We have a bunch of information from the sales folks, from all the other folks that they've talked to. Then we want to plan out based on the information we have. We want to make sure that, there's timelines, responsible parties, everything is essentially laid out, right? From there, we make adjustments if needed, but project considerations are key because timing is key, right? We want you to have your data imported. We want to make sure your single sign-on is connected. We want to make sure your integration with e-signature is connected. Then, of course, we want to map out each one of those steps. Now, of course, the buddy system is always wonderful to have. We want to have, other folks, I don't want to say too many chefs, but we want to definitely have another cook in the kitchen, bouncing ideas off of each other. Also, we use some guiding principles. What's really important for us is, we want to identify the volume of matters that you have. We want to break down, what the end result is. Then we want to move into the reporting requirements, meaning I need to be able to see this information, then I need to be able to make it visible to others, and then of course I need to be able to send out alerts related to it. Our focus is the end result. We want to make sure we understand what your path is today. This will allow us to configure the database to identify the path for tomorrow, but not only for the admins of the database, we're talking about for your standard users, right? Someone logging into the database, accessing, what NDAs do we have, or when a contract is expiring, or maybe they're looking for a document. The modular approach to Legisway is also an important factor. We want to take a look at, the data that you're tracking, of course, let's say in entities or contracts. Then we want to break down each one of those based on intake forms, then how the information displays once it's captured. The reporting requirements, again, is an important factor here, because if you're capturing the data, that means you want to be able to see the data, report the data, and access it ad hoc if need be. And then from there, alerting. This information gets pushed out to specific folks.
Awesome. And Greg, something that we hear, with the customers all the time is that their reporting needs can be very unique. Again, that could be based off of industry regulations, or their alerts, again, will be very tailored based off of, their business processes. How have you kind of seen, just during the implementation journey, we begin to understand those, specific use cases within a client's business?
The great part is that, the team and I have seen all sorts of different reports from all sorts of different clients with, a lot of different industry, requirements. So we take those previous examples, those previous implementations, and bring it into every single other implementation. So we have an idea of what could be needed, right? What we've seen before. We bring in those use cases, those best practices from, hundreds and hundreds of implementations with thousands and thousands of users. And we want to train the administrators on how to get this information in, but then also out. Then we push down into all the other different profiles that access the database. But we tabulate all of those use cases and present. What is the end result is the key. And of course, in terms of configuration, we want to understand, okay, you have 500 of these matters every 6 months, whatever the case is. We want to understand that volume first. Then we need to break down each one of those reporting requirements. Let it be regulation, it could be jurisdiction, etc. We want to understand all of those and find the end result, give you a proof of concept, you give us the okay, and then we execute the final build into the database.
Awesome. Great. And, Michelle, something that very well and we've seen too from our customers is that they like to take Legisway with them. So they use Legisway at one company, they move to another company, and, immediately they say, I need to get Legisway set up. And also we do tend to get a fair number of referrals. And just kind of from your perspective, what would you attribute that to, like in terms of the implementation side? What makes our customers keep coming back to want to replicate it?
I think that's a great question, Dan, and it's actually one of my very favorite things. There's nothing better than a customer coming back to us when they've moved or referring a colleague to us. And I really think it comes down to two things. Of course, they've seen that the product can do what they need, but I think beyond that, it has to do with their implementation and support, and really the fact that I think we were able to make their vision come true. I think those most satisfied customers, the ones that take us with them as they move from one job to another, it's because they saw how we could make their vision come true, which is a lot more than just managing our contracts or managing your entities. It's the specific or unique way that you might want to do that. And once they've seen that, I think it carries an additional value, and they see how that could be the case in their new organization. And then, of course, those are the same people who also see other ways they might be able to use Legisway than the way we started. I think modular and scalable there. You could start, and once you kind of realize that value that you get, you could grow with that. So really, I think that our customers are very happy with the implementation we provide, but the ongoing support as well. And something that might be unique for us is our unlimited training. Training is part of what we provide during that implementation and onboarding process. There's not an additional charge for that. And we always like to say you get training for the life of your subscription. We want you to use the Legisway that you purchased. So that's definitely something that we want to do. And even though your Legisway is customized, so you're a bank and you're tracking those OCC regulations on contracts, automatically your Legisway looks different than a publishing company whose contract intake looks very different. The training we provide is customized to you. It's in your platform with your deliverables, your reports, your different roles and use cases. And we can also do that at a level where we train, I know as Greg mentioned, administrative users, those power users we start with, but also maybe the people that just have view access because they need to look up information. We can train people based on their roles so they're not overwhelmed by things that aren't important, but they see that true value of what they're getting out of the system. And I think it makes it really transferable to a new business as well. I want to just comment on one more thing here as well. One of the puzzle pieces says speedy implementation. And to think of speedy implementation and customization, kind of in the lower corner there together, might seem not possible. And I think that the reason we're able to make that work is because Legisway starts with a core best practice, things that are in common for most businesses. And then our customization, where we're really able to make your vision come true, I think of that as building on top, refining or adding layers that are relevant to your industry and your business, or taking away things that aren't. So because we do start with a base, technically you could start using your Legisway from the first day we create your database. It has structure to it. That allows us to deliver value to you, deliver a live, ready-to-use database. And it could be as little as 6 weeks, depending on what your specifications are.
Excellent. And you bring up a great aspect, Michelle, because something too that I feel a lot of customers have seen based off of prior software implementations, it's just a need to get everything done immediately at the onset. And from what kind of you and Greg are sharing, that is an element that we understand and appreciate, that it's not often feasible to do everything within 1 month's time, and we're there for more of the long-term partnership approach.
Absolutely. And I think actually that's a really great segue, Dan, into our third topic, which is really the implementation journey with Legisway. And the slide we're sharing here is actually one of my favorites, where it's really just kind of a summary or distillation of information we've heard from hundreds of customers over time. Really is to think about Legisway as not implementing technology, but implementing a solution. So to Greg's point about we almost start with the end, what is it that you want to get out of Legisway? That's our starting point. And then from that, with our consulting and partnering with you, we're able to back up and put that in process. Now, we broke this down into kind of 3 areas. And one of the ones that is what you just mentioned, Dan, which is recognize incremental wins, or I feel like that's where that kind of was going. Maybe Greg, could you talk about that a little bit, what we mean by incremental wins, and maybe to Dan's point, not taking on everything all at once if you're not ready to?
Absolutely. So my perspective is always, we start with a base. That's great. It can work for you right away. I think if you need to focus on, priorities, which we identify in our initial kickoff call, we want to identify, the contracts are the priorities, entities are the priorities. Great. We'll start with kind of the most basic information, get it into the system. But we want, at the end of the day, we want to have our initial kickoff call. We identify your priorities, and then we start taking a look at all of the different contracts, the volume, the reporting requirements. How does that information get captured? Right? We want to understand that information. Once we understand kind of how you capture the info, and then how it's going to be, who's going to be inputting the data, kind of reviewing all of these bits and pieces, we can identify, the reporting requirements. How is it being displayed to you? These displays, these intake forms allow you to capture this information, which then feed the engine on the back end of Legisway for reporting purposes, and then pushing it out. That incremental win is we're done with looking at this particular contract type. Let it be the NDA. We had 3 different versions of it. We are able to capture those fields. You can start inputting that data in the moment it's done. Then we move into our master service agreements, or our license agreements, or our vendor agreements. You can start utilizing, as soon as something is configured in Legisway, it's configured and accessible to the users. So you can run your testing, you can run the input, run those reports right away. As soon as it's entered into Legisway, it's reportable, searchable, and then of course, alertable.
I think, Greg, that's a great point you just made. And hidden underneath that is really the fact that we create your database. We don't create a sandbox and configure it and not deliver it till it's completely done. We actually do the full implementation and configuration in your actual production database. And we think that helps you recognize incremental wins sooner as well. To Greg's point, you have your contracts in the system now. You now have a contract repository. Maybe you didn't before. Maybe other things aren't done yet, but you already now have a fully searchable repository of your contracts. Or maybe you have your basic entity information in the system, and with a click of a button, you can create an org chart. So even as other things are going, you can use and get value out of it. And we had a lot of feedback from prior customers that talked about, just even identifying and recognizing those incremental wins can really help you in your organization as you're, evangelizing, if you're one of the champions, which we'll switch to that here, I think, next, but really help the people in your organization see right from the beginning, within 2 weeks, you're going to be getting some value out of Legisway already, even if it's not fully configured for everything that you imagine. So I think it's helpful to be aware of that our process is very iterative that way, and you can start getting value as you continue to work with us. And maybe that does lead us to those internal champion ideas. Dan, did you want to maybe kind of talk about that a little bit and some of the things you've thought and heard in that category?
Right. No, certainly. So, any software implementation or new solution rollout, it always does require, a champion to really be the one to lead it up with inside an organization. And what we're really aware of, though, is that by being that internal champion, that is a time commitment and a time resource. And so our team, from a customer success side, really does take the moment to help lay out a blueprint. How do you begin to communicate this out to the organization, the new solution? How do you do the training? And how do you create the right culture where everyone's going to adopt it and get excited about it? Just from my own personal experience of rolling out software, it is a bit of a journey, but it's also, a great opportunity for one to kind of take on a new initiative internally. But what we're also mindful of too is just the time commitment side. So with Legisway, what we typically see, it's about 2 hours per week that's required from our champions to get the platform up and running. And so over the course of an implementation of 6 weeks, for example, that's a 12-hour resource allocation, which, taking a step back, we feel is manageable and helps, achieve the net results. But as you discussed, Michelle and Greg, the fact that you can continue to train with Legisway, the phased onboarding approach can be accommodated. What we don't want to have to happen is that you have a strategic project that needs to get delivered, within the next 2 months. So because of that, you're rushing at the onset to get your platform up and running. If you need to take a pause and tackle some things first and then go back later to roll out additional parts of the platform, we're here for that, and we understand that allows for a lot more adoption and success for the long term.
I think that's a great point there, Dan, as well. I think we labeled this the implementation journey, and although journey, could suggest something negative, we really mean it in a positive way, that we can kind of take into account all those things, and it really is a journey until you're done. Quite frankly, if you ever are, we don't consider implementation at Legisway kind of a one and done. When we finish what you agree that we're ready to have the basic implementation done and people are trained, we also know that, weeks or months later, as you're using the system, you find that you need refinement, you need some additional changes. That's really still part of the whole process, part of the whole journey. And that's informal. But also more formally, to Dan's point, if you decide, we have customers who their primary focus is to get legal ticketing up and running. That's their priority right now. So we focus on that, getting it just right for the broader business to use, because that can have a very, very large impact. And then maybe we move into something that has additional legal value to them, whether it's their contract management or their entity management or even IP or whatever it might be. So we could do something now and 2 months later start working on something else. So that's really something that, we like to say that every journey is unique. But at that kickoff that Greg mentioned, plus bringing in the value that your sales team will have shared with the implementation team, because we're really all one team, a partnership. We're able to, when we get together at kickoff, really work with you to identify those priorities you have, so we can create a calendar, a schedule based on that. We can figure out what personalized configuration you really need to see your vision come true, how you want to transfer your data into Legisway, if you want us to import it, if you want the AI to import it, and really that training at the end that's role-based. So, that manager from marketing gets training that's unique for what it is they need versus other people. So, everything is unique, but we follow a framework. And working with those internal champions who can guide us through the goals of the organization, we can really get you to some of those wins, and for as little as Dan mentioned of 12 hours over 6 weeks, or whatever period of time is necessary for the number of modules you might have chosen. So Greg, I wanted to ask you, do you think that, how do you know when a client's sort of vision has been achieved? Obviously, we show them the configuration, they confirm it, but do you get feedback very often from them once they kind of see the implementation be complete, when they're really ready to go live, if you will? What's a typical kind of reaction or feedback you might get at that point?
we definitely get, confirmation something is working the way it needs to, but then sometimes there's a wow factor, like, wow, I can't believe this actually, we're translating, a process into a digital click through workflow, right? And so you'll get the wow factor, but then most importantly is once their internal customers, their internal clients, the business starts utilizing the solution, they get that feedback. And that's the story that we really want to hear. That's the story that our internal champions really, tell us. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from our marketing team, from our sales team, from our, legal team, our attorneys. They're happy with how the information is flowing, how it's being captured, how it's displaying. But then, of course, then it becomes, an opportunity for us to do some deeper training if we need to. Those internal champions are going to be the folks that say, oh, we've brought on 2 new attorneys. We want to onboard them, but put blinders on them, show them exactly what they need to see versus, the admins or the viewer from marketing or the, Johnny from sales. They really want us to take them through that journey specifically for that individual. And that's where the configuration, that the scalability of Legisway kicks in. And then, of course, our team is always hands-on when it comes to those opportunities. We want to make sure that we get in front of that specific user group, and then we partner with those internal champions to really tailor that training session or tailor that discussion for that particular user.
I think if we just kind of break it down to the basics, to repeat again, that with a new Legisway customer, we start off with a kickoff meeting. And the kickoff is with the champions, not your IT team. You don't need your IT team there. They're busy. It's with the champions that are going to be help kind of manage this through the process. You get a dedicated implementation consultant from Legisway, and your sales rep will likely be on the call as well because they've helped to transfer that information. We're not starting over from scratch and losing all of that information you shared with the process that led you to purchase Legisway to begin with. We want to make sure that comes into this process as well. So during that, we talk about the timeline, the priorities, and really put a plan together, including things as practical as single sign-on and e-signature integration, and things that are maybe a little bit more exciting about exactly what kind of automated alerts do you need, what workflows are you interested in, what kind of reports do you need, and then doing that, importing data after configuration is done, whether we do that via AI or do through services, and really then that role-based training. So a kickoff, the configuration, the data import, and then training. Those are the 4 really pillars of our implementation, and the length of time it takes is based on your priorities and your modules, if you will, what it is in Legisway you're trying to accomplish. And really, our goal is to get you value as quickly as possible with those incremental wins, and then hopefully maybe get a little bit of that wow factor, as Greg mentioned at the end, once you see it really all come together. That's very rewarding from our perspective. And as Dan mentioned earlier, the customers that come back to us when they've left and gone to a new organization and they can immediately see the value that Legisway can bring, that's obviously something that makes us feel really good about the work that we put in, that people come back to us like that. Dan or Greg, anything else you'd like to kind of add to this slide here?
I just actually wanted to ask you, Michelle, is, in terms of the customer journey too, which again, I think perfectly sums up how we view onboarding implementation, because what we hear from customers is that their business needs change, is maybe 6 months down the road, a type of report or a KPI or just a regulation that they have to manage they didn't know about, but now they do have to know about it. So what have you kind of seen just from your experience of leading up the implementation team on how we help customers continue to navigate just new regulations or new processes that are being tossed their way that are pretty much out of the blue on their side?
So, that is something actually we really love doing. Legisway is so flexible, is the way I think of it. So a good example is, maybe a year and a half ago or so, there were some new regulations related to beneficial ownership interest reporting that came out of the federal corruption guidelines. And we had some customers who were using us for entity management, and entity management has org charts. It has business registrations, business licenses, shareholders, officers and directors, but it didn't have anything that screamed beneficial ownership. And we had some customers come to us and say, is this something you could help us with? And we had some some consultations and really started picking it apart, looking at the sort of regulatory legal expertise that we have, and we were able to actually build out a submodule for beneficial ownership that, together with our customers, as they talked about the information they wanted to capture, we could also reflect what's required of the regulation. And now we have a submodule that can help those customers as well as other customers manage that kind of information. And in my mind, that's really kind of that evolution of Legisway. There's a core of what it does and this flexibility and relational nature. And, you know, if something has, as simple as it has a start date and an end date, and it might require reporting or approval, we could probably do it in Legisway. And I would say the majority of our best ideas came directly from customers. Of course, we do market research and all that as well, but they come directly from customers who said, hey, can you help us do this, or could Legisway do that? And then we can build that out. And then, as Greg pointed out, the next time we have an implementation, we might mention that to the customer. Is this something you would be interested in as well? So we try to bring our ideas forward in case they will help. And if they're not necessary, you know, that's fine too. But we're able to bring those kind of past configurations, those past realization of solving of problems, so that other customers can benefit from it as well. And I think that we've seen a lot of growth in the product that way over the years. For example, we have an invoice management module now. And years ago, we had a few customers say to us, you know, I'd really like to look at not e-billing, but the spend that I have for my outside counsel. But you know what? I want it connected. I want it connected to that big contract that we hired them to work on, or I want it connected, of course, to maybe the claim or the IP that they were working on. And Legisway is uniquely able to tie something like an invoice and a law firm to the matter, which isn't even necessarily litigation within the system. And that became so popular, it became really a full-blown module that's available to anybody now. So, well, I'm going to just kind of move on to our conclusion here, really, is, you know, I think that if you're here today, you probably know a little bit about what Legisway is, but it's really that all-in-one or that multi-matter workflow and productivity solution for corporate legal departments. We try to keep the user interface very intuitive. We offer integrations via API and a broad set of modules to choose from. And really our goal is to empower the corporate legal department to organize the work and collaborate with the broader business. I do see actually a question in the chat here. So how does Legisway's pricing work? We have basically 3 packages of Legisway, and so that's where you start, sort of based on whether or not you want AI or not, based on whether or not you want legal ticketing, and then it's basically user-based, based on the types of users you might want. And Dan and his team could dig in and give you some really specifics on that if you were interested. Does Legisway have an app? Actually, Legisway does not have an app, but it is very mobile friendly. One of the things I like about it the most is with the workflows that we have. So for example, maybe you need people to approve a contract before it's signed or something like that. A task can be set up and somebody can get that on their phone and easily fulfill that even without needing an app. So we've tried to keep it really simple. We don't have an app, but that's because we don't need one. I don't know if I missed another question, so my other colleagues, if you see any, please jump in. I feel like I might have missed one. We can also look after the fact. Anybody who submitted a question that we didn't get to, we can follow up afterwards. You know, if you're interested in learning more about what an implementation might look like for your organization, you know, please either visit our website or reach out to any one of us here on the call, and we can talk you through the specifics of what it might look for you. Again, we do have really, we think, speedy, efficient implementation, fast time to value, but every implementation is a little bit different. So we'd love to talk to you about what you envision and how we can make that happen. Any last comments from Dan or Greg?
No, I think you covered everything, Michelle and Greg. And again, we just, you know, welcome any opportunity that we have to discuss your, you know, business needs. Really, we do view this again as a journey, and our goal is to ensure your success. We understand each business is unique, and that's part of what makes Legisway, you know, very, I would say, differentiated. Is we appreciate that, and we're committed to helping address your specific use cases.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I just, as a last little slide, put up our next webinar. It's only a few weeks away, and it's specifically talking about integrations with one of our integration leads on the product team. So thank you for joining us today. We hope you found this information helpful. Feel free to follow up and consider joining us in the future for another webinar. Thank Thank you and have a great day.